The message came on a Wednesday afternoon while I was folding laundry. "Hey, Mom. There's a little get-together this weekend. Nothing big, just close friends from work." That's all it said. No address. No time. No follow-up. I stared at my phone a while before typing a quick reply. "Sounds nice. Have fun." Then I tucked it into the pocket of my cardigan and went back to folding towels. At 70, I've learned to stop asking questions that don't want answers. Cassian used to be different, used to call me after every meeting, every date, every breakthrough. But since he got serious with Brindell, things had shifted. Not suddenly, but subtly, like a door slowly closing. Still, I didn't want to assume the worst. Maybe it really was a casual gathering. Maybe they were keeping it small, informal. And I didn't want to be the kind of mother who needed to be center stage. I never have been. So that Saturday, I stayed home. The house was quiet. Just the ticking of the mantel clock and the hum of the kettle. I baked a batch of cinnamon rolls, his favorite since he was 9, and wrapped it carefully in parchment and twine. Just in case he dropped by afterward. He didn't. Instead, I sat by the window with a book I wasn't really reading, watching shadows move across the floorboards. I thought about the summer we spent at the lake when he was 10, how he used to sneak out of his tent just to sleep in mine, because the woods felt too wide and lonely. Now, the distance between us felt just as wide, but quieter. I glanced at the cinnamon rolls on the counter, still warm, out of habit. I opened my phone, and that's when I saw the photos, his hand in hers. The lights, the champagne tower, the perfect caption. My heart didn't break. It paused. And then I walked to the fireplace and took down the frame. The frame felt heavier than usual in my hands, though I knew that was just my chest tightening. It was the photo I always kept on the mantel, Cassian at 9, hair sticking up wildly. Both of us laughing with marshmallows on sticks. I'd taken it with one of those disposable cameras, and despite the faded corners, it remained my favorite. It reminded me of a time when I was his safe place. I held it as I walked back to the kitchen, setting it beside the untouched cinnamon rolls. My phone was still open on the photo, and I hesitated before scrolling, but my fingers moved on their own. There was Brindle, in a silky cream dress that caught the light like water. Cassian, smiling in that polite, practiced way he'd learned since joining her world. Behind them, a massive sign in gold lettering. She said yes. The post had already been up for hours. Hundreds of likes, comments from colleagues, influencers, even distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years. One read, "So happy to be part of this beautiful moment. Another truly magical night with all the people who matter most." I read that line twice. All the people who matter most. I wasn't there. I sat down slowly, my hand still wrapped around the photo frame. Not angry. Not yet. Just hollow, as if I'd been quietly written out of a story I spent 3 decades building. It didn't take much thought. I took a picture of the framed photo and posted it on my page. No caption at first. Then, after a moment, I typed, "My favorite, close friend. A quiet weekend well spent." I didn't tag him. I didn't need to. People would see. I set the frame down again beside the cinnamon rolls, turned off the kettle, and stood by the window. Within an hour, the comments started. A few likes. Then more. Then someone wrote, "Wait, you weren't there?" I didn't reply. I just watched the sun slide low behind the pine trees and waited for my phone to ring. By nightfall, the post had more attention than I'd expected. Dozens of people friends from the neighborhood, old colleagues. Even Cassian's childhood piano teacher had liked or commented. Most just left hearts or simple words like "sweet memory," but others asked questions. Careful, quiet questions. Did you get to go to the party? Was that taken this weekend? You deserve to be celebrated too. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table. Letting the glow of the screen sit in the corner of my vision like a candle, I wasn't quite ready to blow out. I wasn't trying to ruin anything. I didn't need drama. I only wanted anyone, to notice I hadn't been included. And they had. That was enough. More than Cassian had given me in months. It was nearly midnight when the call came. His name lit up on the screen. Cassian. I stared at it for a second longer than I should have. Then picked up. He didn't greet me. Mom. Why would you post that? His voice wasn't angry, it was tight. Controlled. Like someone managing a PR crisis. I imagined Brindle standing nearby. Arms crossed. Waiting to hear how he'd fix the situation. I kept my voice steady. I was just looking through old photos. Thought I'd share a favorite. He exhaled. Sharp. It made people uncomfortable. They're asking questions. Then maybe you should answer them. A long silence followed. I didn't mean to exclude you, he said finally. It was just a different kind of event. Where your mother didn't fit, I asked. He didn't respond, and I didn't press him. We exchanged no goodbyes. Just the soft sound of him hanging up. I placed the phone down, drained my tea, and blew out the small candle near the sink. I should have gone to bed, but instead, I opened my laptop and clicked through the party photos again, searching for familiar faces. And that's when Frida's name caught my eye. Frida Landon. We'd taught at the same high school for 20 years before retiring within a year of each other. She'd known Cassian since he was in braces and spelling bees. Seeing her name tagged beneath one of Brindle's perfectly posed photos sent a quiet thud through my chest. The picture showed Frida smiling politely near the buffet table, holding a champagne flute. She hadn't mentioned the party when we last spoke just a few days earlier. When she called to ask for a zucchini bread recipe, that wasn't like her. I hesitated, then messaged her lovely photo. Hope it was a nice event. She responded less than 10 minutes later. Oh. For Lyra. I'm so sorry. Cassian said you were on a cruise. I never would have gone if I'd known. I stared at the message. A cruise. He hadn't just failed to invite me. He'd gone out of his way to erase the possibility that I might show up, or that anyone would think to ask about me. A false story wrapped in politeness, served with sparkling wine and coordinated place cards. I typed back, "Don't worry. Frida, not your fault." Then I closed the screen and sat in silence. I thought about the time I let Cassian skip school in 10th grade because he was too nervous for a debate meet. We made pancakes and watched old black and white movies all morning, he'd said. Mom, this is the best day of my life. I believed him. Now, years later, he'd told a room full of people that I was off vacationing glossed over like a footnote. I stood slowly, my knees aching a bit, and walked to the kitchen drawer where I kept a legal pad and pen. I wrote 2 things at the top. 1. Lemon tree trim. 2. Update will. Then I underlined the second one. Twice. I folded the list in half and placed it inside my recipe book. The same book Cassian never asked to borrow. Never mentioned again. And as I closed the drawer, I remembered the last time he'd been inside this house. It had been nearly a year since Cassian last stepped through my front door. He came alone that time, unannounced, on a rainy Tuesday with his coat soaked through and shoulders drawn tight. I remember opening the door and being surprised by how small he looked, smaller than I remembered. Though of course he wasn't. We sat in the kitchen, the smell of roasted garlic still in the air from my earlier dinner. I offered him leftovers, but he declined. He only wanted tea. We didn't talk much. Just enough for him to say he was figuring things out and that work had been consuming. He left after 30 minutes, barely touching the tea, and I didn't see him again. I think I knew, even then, that something had shifted. The visits used to be regular Sunday breakfasts, grocery runs. Even silent evenings spent assembling furniture or watching documentaries neither of us truly liked. Then Brindle came into his life with her sharp suits and curated playlists, and the rhythm between us began to stutter. Still, I never resented her. Not at first. I wanted him to be happy. I'd spent decades putting his happiness first, and I wasn't about to stop just because it came in a form I didn't quite recognize. But I remembered when it was just me and him after Emmerich died. I built our world from scratch. I worked long hours counseling students who reminded me of Cassian Bright, anxious, looking for someone to believe in them. I packed school lunches with handwritten notes, spent nights learning how to patch drywall because I couldn't afford a handyman. I gave him everything I had, and I never asked for much in return just to be remembered, to be part of the life I helped make possible. I walked to the linen closet and pulled out the fireproof box with the will. It had dust on the corners. I placed it on the table but didn't open it just yet. Instead, I reached for the envelope beside it, the one with Emmerich's handwriting still on the flap. A few days after my quiet moment with the will, I received a call from Frida. She sounded hesitant, as if weighing her words carefully before speaking. I went to the party. Verlira. It was really beautiful, so much effort went into it. I wish you could have been there. Everyone else was invited. Neighbors, old teachers, even Cassian's new business partners. It just didn't feel right without you. I know it must have hurt, and I'm sorry they left you out. You've done so much for Cassian, and everyone who knows you thinks the world of you. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. I swallowed hard, wishing I could tell her it was an accident or some terrible misunderstanding, but the truth sat heavy in my chest. Cassian had lied, not just about the event's nature, but about me. When I asked why he would say I was on a cruise, Frida sighed. I don't know. Maybe to avoid awkward questions, or maybe because Brindle wanted a clean slate without reminders of the past. It hurt me too. Verlira, you deserved better. I thanked her and ended the call, feeling the weight of those words settle into my bones. To be so carefully excluded, so deliberately erased, hurt far deeper than a missed party. It was a declaration one I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. That evening, I found myself tracing the edges of a worn envelope on my kitchen table. It was Emmerich's handwriting on the seal, a reminder of promises made long ago. I pulled it open slowly and unfolded a faded letter. His words, penned years before, spoke of love and legacy, how he wanted me to have the strength to protect what mattered most, even if he couldn't be here. I folded the letter back and placed it carefully inside the box. My eyes settled on the calendar hanging by the door, a reminder that time was moving forward, whether I was ready or not. With a steady breath, I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. It was time to make sure the future was still mine to shape. It was late one evening when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I hesitated before opening it, not expecting much, but when I pressed play, the voice that spilled out stopped me cold. It's Brindle, the message began. Crisp and polished, her tone wrapped in a practiced politeness that barely masked something colder beneath. Cassian's mom. She's sweet, really. But, she's just not our vibe. It's like counselor energy or something. We're building a new image here, more elevated, more refined. Her words sliced through the quiet of my living room like a winter wind. I held the phone close, listening to the soft click at the end of the recording. The casual cruelty of it settled deep inside me. I thought about the years I spent shaping Cassian's world, about the sacrifices I made to give him a future. I remembered the nights I stayed up late helping him with his homework, the weekends spent driving to soccer games, the quiet dinners where we talked about everything and nothing. And now, Brindle was telling the people closest to her that I didn't fit, that I was an embarrassment, an inconvenience to be quietly pushed aside. I set the phone down and stared out the window. The street was silent, except for the distant hum of passing cars. I felt a surge of something fierce rise within me, a determination not to be diminished or erased. But this time, I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't beg. I would act with quiet strength, the kind that comes from knowing your worth without needing others to remind you. The next morning, I called the lawyer I'd spoken to years ago and asked to set up a meeting. It was time to secure the future on my terms. I tucked the phone away and began preparing for what was next, knowing that some battles are won in silence, but never without resolve. The office smelled of old paper and faint peppermint when I arrived, a quiet sanctuary away from the storm swirling in my heart. The lawyer, a man named Harold, greeted me with a gentle nod and ushered me into his cluttered study. I handed him the thick envelope I'd brought the original copy of my will. His eyes scanned the familiar handwriting, and I could see the questions behind his glasses. I cleared my throat. "Things have changed," I said softly. "I'd like to make some updates." He listened as I explained how Cassian's name needed to be removed from the inheritance, how I wanted the house, the savings, and the little cabin upstate to go to a scholarship fund for students like those I'd once counseled. Students who, like Cassian once, had potential, but needed a hand. Harold nodded, understanding the weight behind my words. He asked about the timing, and I told him soon. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon enough, after we finished. He handed me a new draft to review. It was everything I wanted clean, clear, and final. Driving home, the sun slanting low over the trees, I felt a curious lightness mixed with the ache of letting go. This document was more than paper. It was a line drawn, a statement of self-worth. I placed the new will on my kitchen table, right next to the lemon loaf that had sat untouched for days. The phone rang again that evening. It was Cassian. His voice was softer now, more tentative. He asked about the post, about the photo. He wanted to meet, to talk, to fix. I let the call ring out. Instead, I brewed a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the last light fade. I knew some doors close so others can finally open. And so, I turned toward what was waiting on the other side. Weeks passed in a slow blur of quiet mornings and restless nights. I had almost convinced myself that Cassian's call was the last ripple in a pond long since settled. Then, one afternoon, the invitation arrived. It came not by phone, but through a neatly typed email from Brindell's assistant. "You are cordially invited to a bridal brunch in honor of Cassian and Brindell. We hope you can join us." I read the words twice. A brunch, a celebration, an invitation to join the life they had built without me. The house felt suddenly colder, though the spring sun poured through the windows. I folded the email and set it on the kitchen counter beside my worn recipe book. The lemon loaf sat untouched again. I imagined the table white linens, fine china, delicate bouquets, all the people who mattered to them gathered in bright rooms filled with laughter and promises of forever. And me, would I be the awkward shadow they pretended to tolerate? The relic of a past they'd carefully boxed away. I stared at the invitation until the edges curled. Then, I wrote a brief reply. "Thank you for the invitation, but I will not be attending." No explanations, no apologies. That evening, I poured myself a cup of chamomile tea and sat by the window, the city lights flickering like distant stars. For the first time in months, I felt a strange calm settling over me. Cassian didn't call again that day, nor the next. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. The world outside might forget me, but I hadn't forgotten myself. The next morning, I began planning a garden, one with sturdy roots and quiet blossoms, because sometimes peace grows from letting go. Months drifted by like autumn leaves on a slow-moving stream. News of Cassian's engagement eventually faded from my feed, replaced by snapshots of new homes, travels, and milestones I wasn't part of. The silence from him was thick, but I had learned to carry it without breaking. One evening, I scrolled through my old posts again, the photo of Cassian and me, glowing by the campfire. It still had over 400 likes and comments from people who remembered a different story than the one Brindel and Cassian lived now. I read a message from a childhood neighbor. "Thank you for always being there. Verlira, you raised a good man." My throat tightened. I wanted to believe it was true. Then my phone buzzed softly with a message from Cassian. It was brief. I should have handled things differently. "I'm sorry." I stared at the screen for a long moment before setting it down. I didn't reply. Words wouldn't undo the quiet exclusion or the cold distance. Some wounds aren't meant to be healed by apologies, but by time and distance. Instead, I brewed a cup of tea and settled into my favorite chair by the window. Outside, the wind carried the scent of pine and earth, and the leaves rustled like whispered secrets. I thought of Emmerich, of the promises we made, and of the peace I was beginning to find within myself. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. I had given Cassian everything I could love. Sacrifice. Hope. The rest was his to choose. The framed photo still sat on the mantel. A reminder that some memories refuse to fade, and some bonds remain, no matter how far apart we grow. And in that quiet, I found something new, the strength to let go, and the courage to embrace whatever comes next.